The massive Krell battle cruiser Eternal Dominance hung motionless against the starfield, its scaled hull reflecting the distant light of twin suns. On the command deck, Admiral Tak stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, staring at the main display with golden compound eyes. "Report again," he ordered, his voice carrying the distinctive clicking undertone of the Krell elite caste. Lieutenant Dury approached with caution. "Admiral, sensors detect an unknown vessel approaching Sector 7. Energy signature doesn't match any known species in our database." Tak flicked his secondary eyelids in dismissal. "Another sensor malfunction. That's the third this cycle. Schedule maintenance." "Sir, with respect, the readings are consistent. We've been tracking it for 17 minutes. The Admiral turned to face his officer. Tak was old even by Krell standards, his exoskeleton bearing the polish of age and the decorative markings of numerous victories. 3 golden bands circled his throat, one for each interstellar campaign he had commanded to victory. "Show me," he finally said. The main display shifted to show a small vessel, oddly rounded compared to the angular designs favored by most spacefaring races. It appeared primitive. Thermal exhaust ports exposed, minimal weapon mounts visible, and a hull that seemed absurdly thin. "Magnify," ordered Tak. The image zoomed in, revealing markings on the hull. Translation software processed the symbols. "Pathfinder, United Earth Alliance." "Humans," murmured Commander Jian, Tak's second-in-command. "We received intelligence briefings about them last cycle. They achieved faster-than-light travel less than a century ago." Tak's mandibles clicked in amusement. "A hatchling civilization, then. Hardly worth our attention." "They're broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies," Dury reported, "requesting communication." "Curious," Tak said. "Most new species avoid Krell space." "Put them through." The screen changed to show a human face. Small eyes, soft features, no exoskeleton whatsoever. The being smiled, displaying flat teeth unsuited for proper combat. "Greetings to the esteemed vessel of the Krell Empire. I am Ambassador Minho of Earth's diplomatic corps. We come with peaceful intentions and hopes to establish formal relations with your people." Tak studied the human. Despite representing what must be an insignificant civilization, this Minho spoke with remarkable confidence. Intelligence reports classified humans as adaptable but technologically limited, barely a footnote in galactic affairs. "I am Admiral Tak, 7th Fleet Commander. Your vessel has entered Krell territorial space without authorization. Explain yourself." Ambassador Minho remained calm. "We've been exploring this sector for scientific purposes and only recently became aware of Krell boundaries. We apologize for any misunderstanding. May we arrange a meeting to discuss formal diplomatic recognition?" Tak considered. The proper protocol would be to escort the vessel away with a warning. Yet something about the humans intrigued him, perhaps their boldness. "Very well. A small delegation may board. You will be scanned for weapons." Hours later, Tak found himself in the grand reception chamber with the human representatives. Their delegation was led by Ambassador Minho, but Tak's attention focused on their vessel's commander, Captain Juwu. Unlike the diplomat, Captain Juwu carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of a warrior, despite her small stature and lack of natural armor. Her eyes constantly assessed the room, noting exits, security measures, and the positions of Krell guards. "Your ship," Tak said to Juwu, "it seems inadequate for deep space travel." Juwu smiled. "The Pathfinder serves our needs effectively, Admiral. Sometimes appearances can be deceiving." "Indeed," Tak replied. "Though our scans indicate your hull would rupture under moderate weapons fire, your defensive systems appear minimal. We prioritize different technologies," Juwu said simply. The meeting proceeded with standard diplomatic exchanges. The humans were respectful but showed none of the fear that usually characterized first contacts with the Krell. They spoke as equals, not supplicants, a curiosity that both irritated and intrigued Tak. As the meeting concluded, Ambassador Minho presented Tak with a small gift, a data crystal containing Earth music and art. "We hope this begins a fruitful relationship between our peoples." Tak accepted with formal courtesy, though such sentiments meant little to him. The Krell had dominated their section of the galaxy for millennia. New species either became vassals or enemies. Equals were non-existent. The human delegation prepared to return to their ship. Tak assigned an honor guard to escort them, partly for protocol, partly to gather more intelligence on these unusual visitors. As the group reached the docking bay, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "Admiral," Commander Jian's voice came through the comm. "Vice Commander Suk has taken control of Defense Battery 3. He's targeting the human vessel." Tak's blood ran cold. Suk was a decorated officer, but a hardliner who opposed any diplomatic contact with lesser species. "Override his command codes," Tak ordered, turning to the humans. "Return to your ship immediately." Captain Juwu was already moving, her hand pressed to an earpiece. "Pathfinder, emergency departure protocol. Shields up." Tak rushed to a nearby terminal. "This is Admiral Tak. Security override Talon 7 Black. Ceasefire immediately." On the screen, he watched in horror as energy beams erupted from his ship's lower quadrant, striking directly at the defenseless human vessel. The Pathfinder, still in docking position, took a direct hit from a weapon designed to shatter battlecruisers. By all logic, it should have disintegrated instantly. Instead, the energy seemed to flow around its hull like water, dissipating in a pattern Tak had never witnessed before. The small ship's exterior shimmered with an odd distortion. "Impossible," breathed Tak. Captain Juwu gave him one last look, not of fear or anger, but something like pity. "I'm sorry this happened, Admiral. We truly did come in peace." The human ship disconnected from the docking clamps and rotated with impossible precision. Its engines flared, but instead of the expected acceleration, the Pathfinder seemed to partially blur. There was no other word for it. Parts of the ship appeared to exist in multiple places simultaneously. Second Officer Hannah rushed to Tak's side. "Admiral, our targeting systems can't lock on. The ship is somehow partially phasing out of conventional space." Vice Commander Suk fired again. The energy beam passed through the space where the Pathfinder had been, hitting nothing. The human ship stabilized some distance away, fully visible again. The communication channel opened. "Admiral Tak," Captain Juwu's voice was calm but cold. "We will be reporting this unprovoked attack to Earth Command. Until then, be advised that any further aggressive actions will be met with an appropriate response." The channel closed. The small ship rotated once more, then vanished in a way that defied Krell understanding of physics. Not the familiar flash of faster-than-light travel, but a rippling folding of space itself. In the stunned silence that followed, Tak turned to his officers. "Detain Vice Commander Suk immediately." And then he paused, still processing what he had witnessed. "Prepare a full report for High Command. It seems we have gravely underestimated the humans." Tak stared at the empty space where the Pathfinder had been. This encounter would become the first documented case in what would eventually be called the Human Incident Files, a growing collection of events that would fundamentally change how the galaxy viewed its newest spacefaring species. Admiral Tak stood frozen on the command deck of the Eternal Dominance, his golden compound eyes fixed on the main display. Where chaos should have been, the scattered atoms of a destroyed human vessel, there was only the intact Pathfinder, surrounded by a strange rippling field that had somehow absorbed a Krell-heavy beam weapon. "Impossible," he whispered. Beside him, First Officer Miju's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "By the 7 moons," she whispered, "that ship just phased through our targeting grid." The command deck erupted into frantic activity. Weapons officers shouted conflicting readings while sensor technicians recalibrated their equipment, certain there must be some malfunction. "Admiral, Call Lieutenant Dury from the communication station. The human vessel is hailing us. Tak hesitated only briefly. On screen, Captain Juwu's face appeared, remarkably calm despite the unprovoked attack on her vessel. There was no fear in her eyes, only a controlled intensity that made Tak's exoskeleton tighten instinctively. "Admiral Tak," she said, her voice level. "We came in peace. We're still hoping to maintain that approach." Tak struggled to process what he had witnessed. The Krell weapon that had struck the Pathfinder was capable of shearing through battle cruiser armor. Yet this small diplomatic vessel had not only survived, it had somehow manipulated the very fabric of space around it. Vice Commander Suk acted without authorization. Tak said finally, "I have ordered an immediate ceasefire. You have my formal apology for this violation of diplomatic protocol." Juwu nodded once. "We accept your apology, Admiral. However, we must insist on certain assurances before we continue our mission." Before Tak could respond, the tactical display flickered. Red warning signals flashed across multiple screens. "Admiral," Miju called urgently, "the human ship has activated some kind of energy field. Our weapons systems they're shutting down." Tak whirled to face the tactical station. "Explain." "I cannot, sir," the weapons officer replied, mandibles trembling. "Some kind of cascading energy disruption is moving through our offensive systems. Power levels are dropping to minimal. Weapons are offline." "How?" "We have triple redundancy safeguards." "Unknown, sir. There's no physical damage." The systems simply stopped. On screen, Captain Juwu spoke again. "A precautionary measure, Admiral. Your weapons will return to normal functionality once we've concluded our business. I hope you understand." Tak felt a chill run through his body. Whatever technology the humans possessed, it had just neutralized a Krell battlecruiser's offensive capabilities without firing a single shot. "I understand," he said slowly. "Vice Commander Suk is being detained. I request a brief recess to consult with my officers." "Of course. We'll maintain position." When the screen darkened, Tak turned to his senior staff. "Emergency Council." Now, 10 minutes later, in the secure war room, Tak faced his top officers and the ship's lead intelligence analyst, Sunwoo. "Explain how we missed this," Tak demanded. "Every intelligence report classified human technology as primitive. Yet they just neutralized our weapons and performed space maneuvers that should be impossible." Sunwoo's antennae drooped in distress. "Admiral, all our assessments were based on observed human technology and intercepted communications. Their visible ships, weapons, and defenses are indeed basic compared to Krell standards. There was no indication of dimensional phase technology or remote energy disruption capabilities." "Clearly your intelligence was flawed," hissed Commander Jian. "Or deliberately misleading," countered Miju. "What if humans have been concealing their true capabilities?" Sunwoo activated a holographic display showing technical specifications of the Pathfinder. "This is what makes no sense, Admiral. By all external measures, this is a standard diplomatic vessel. Our scans confirm basic hull materials, conventional propulsion systems, and minimal weapons, yet it performed in ways that defy those specifications. Could they be using some form of camouflage technology?" asked Tak. "Possibly," said Sunwoo. "But to mask energy signatures at this level would require technology beyond even our theoretical understanding." Tak paced the room, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. "What concerns me most is that this is merely their diplomatic vessel. If a ship designated for peaceful contact has these capabilities, what might their actual military vessels do?" A heavy silence fell over the room. "We must report this to High Command immediately," Miju finally said. "And say what?" countered Tak. "That we attacked a diplomatic vessel without provocation and discovered the supposedly primitive humans possess technology that makes our defenses obsolete." "The truth must be reported," insisted Jian. "Yes," Tak agreed, "but carefully. First, I need to understand exactly what we're facing. He turned to his officers. I want a complete analysis of everything we observed. Every energy reading, every spatial distortion. Compare it against all known technologies from all 12 spacefaring species in our databases. As the council disbanded, Tak returned to the command deck alone. He stared at the small human ship on the display. It seemed so unassuming, like a water droplet beside the ocean that was the Krell battlecruiser. Yet that droplet had just demonstrated the power to slip through solid matter and disable advanced weapon systems remotely. He opened a private channel to the Pathfinder. Captain Juwu, I request a private conference. No diplomats, no staff, just ship commanders. There was a brief pause before Juwu responded. Very well, Admiral. I'll come aboard your vessel in 1 hour. When they met in Tak's private quarters, the size difference between them was striking. Tak towered over the human captain, his armored exoskeleton making him 3 times her mass. Yet power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. Your ship, Tak began without preamble, performed maneuvers that violate our understanding of physics. Juwu smiled slightly. Not violated, Admiral. We simply work with different principles. Principles that allow you to phase through matter, to disable advanced weapon systems remotely. Yes, she said simply. Human research took a different path than most species. While the Krell focused on energy weapons and armor, we explored dimensional boundaries and quantum field manipulation. Tak's mandibles clicked in surprise at her forthrightness. Why reveal this now? Such capabilities would have earned you immediate respect in galactic politics. Juwu leaned forward. Admiral, humanity doesn't seek dominance through fear or intimidation. We hope to establish relationships based on mutual respect, not threats. She paused. Unfortunately, Vice Commander Suk forced our hand. The implications are significant, Tak said carefully. If your diplomatic vessels can do this, then imagine our dedicated military ships. Juwu finished for him. Yes, that conclusion is accurate. But please understand, we genuinely desire peaceful relations. Tak studied the human captain closely. In his 3 centuries of service, he had faced many adversaries, but never one so paradoxical, possessing overwhelming technological advantage, yet seeking peaceful coexistence. My intelligence analyst is particularly troubled by one fact, Tak said finally. Our most advanced scans still show your ship constructed of conventional materials. How is this possible? Juwu smiled again. Because the ship itself isn't special, Admiral. It's the field generators within it. We don't build impervious ships. We simply ensure attacks never fully connect with them. As Juwu departed, Tak faced the most difficult report of his career. How could he explain to High Command that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was wrong? That the galaxy's power balance had shifted overnight? In his private log that night, he recorded, "Today marks a turning point for the Krell Empire. We have encountered a species that appears physically unimposing, yet possesses technology that renders our greatest weapons ineffective. Most concerning is not what they have shown us, but what they may still be concealing. We must reassess everything we thought we knew about the humans." The message spread across the unified galactic network with alarming speed. Despite attempts by Krell Information Security to contain the news, within 3 planetary rotations, every major species had received reports of the incident. A small human vessel had survived a direct hit from Krell weapons, phased through space itself, and remotely disabled a battlecruiser's offensive systems without firing a shot. Admiral Tak stood before the High Command Council, 6 ancient Krell whose carapaces bore the deep purple of supreme authority, their compound eyes fixed on him with cold calculation. "Explain again," demanded High Commander Ran, "how a primitive species performed these impossible feats." Tak maintained perfect posture despite his discomfort. "The evidence suggests humanity has developed technology along entirely different paths than our own. While we focused on conventional weapons and defenses, they appear to have mastered manipulation of dimensional boundaries. Impossible, hissed another counselor. Our scientists have theorized such technologies for centuries. The power requirements alone would be beyond any developing species. Yet we all saw the recordings, countered Ran. The human ship absorbed a direct hit from our heavy cannons, then partially phased out of normal space. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled over them. For millennia, the Krell Empire had maintained superiority through overwhelming firepower and impenetrable defenses. If humans could simply step sideways out of reality to avoid attacks, that advantage vanished. There is another matter, Tak added reluctantly. Our sensors indicate the Vrex Dominion has dispatched a diplomatic fleet toward Earth space. This news caused visible agitation among the counselors. The Vrex, with their hive mind consciousness and rapid technological adaptation, had been the Krell's most persistent rivals for centuries. They seek to ally with the humans against us, stated Counselor J flatly. This cannot be permitted. High Commander Rand's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Admiral Tak, you are to gather all possible intelligence on human capabilities. We must understand the full extent of their technology before determining our response. Tak departed the council chamber with a sense of foreboding. In the corridor, his communication device signaled an incoming message from Intelligence Director Sunwoo. Admiral. Sunwoo's voice was tense. The military council is developing containment plans for possible conflict with humans. They're calling it Operation Swift Strike. Tak's blood ran cold. On whose authority? Grand Marshal Dai himself. They believe humanity must be neutralized before they can fully emerge as a galactic power. Madness, whispered Tak. They don't understand what they're facing. After ending the call, Tak made a decision that could end his career, or worse. He sent an encrypted message directly to Captain Juwu, bypassing all official channels. 6 hours later, they met in an abandoned observation post orbiting the small moon of Krell's third planet. Tak came alone, violating every security protocol for a flag officer. Captain Juwu arrived in a small shuttle, also unaccompanied. She wore the same simple uniform as before, no weapons visible. Yet Tak now understood this human was potentially more dangerous than an entire Krell strike team. Thank you for coming, Tak began, his translator conveying his words into human standard. I needed to speak with you directly, without official records. Juwu nodded. I assumed as much when I received your encrypted message. Your ship moved in ways that violate known physics, he stated plainly, coming directly to the point. Juwu's smile was enigmatic. Not violated, Admiral. We just found the loopholes. Explain. She gestured to the stars visible through the observation window. Every spacefaring species we've encountered followed similar developmental paths. You all mastered energy manipulation, built increasingly powerful weapons, stronger shields, tougher hulls. It's a straightforward approach. Hit harder, defend stronger. While humans did what instead? Tak asked. We asked different questions. Instead of how do we absorb or deflect an attack, we asked, what if the attack never fully connects? She traced her finger along the window. Reality isn't as solid as it appears. There are spaces between spaces, dimensional boundaries that can be manipulated with the right technology. Tak's scientific mind raced with implications. Quantum tunneling, probability manipulation. Something like that, Juwu confirmed. Our ships don't need to be impervious to attacks. They simply ensure attacks never fully connect. The energy is channeled into dimensional pockets or redirected through temporary subspace folds. This technology, Tak said carefully. How long have humans possessed it? We've been developing it since before we achieved faster-than-light travel. It's fundamental to our approach to space. The revelation stunned Tak. Humans hadn't recently leaped ahead technologically. They had been advancing along an entirely different path all along, one that Krell science had barely theorized. There's something else you should know, Tak said gravely. Certain factions within the Krell military are advocating for preemptive action against human settlements. They fear what your civilization might become. Jiwoo's expression hardened. That would be a catastrophic mistake, Admiral. I agree, but I may not be able to prevent it. The High Command sees humanity as an emerging threat that must be contained. Before Jiwoo could respond, both their communication devices activated simultaneously. Emergency signals. Tak read the message, his compound eyes widening in horror. No, he whispered. What is it? Asked Jiwoo, checking her own device. The Stellar Vanguard, a radical military faction led by Marshal Q, has broken from High Command. They've launched an unauthorized assault fleet. Tak looked up at the human captain, mandibles trembling. They're targeting your Mars colony. Jiwoo's face showed no fear, only cold determination. She activated her comm unit. Earth Command, Priority Alpha. Defensive fleet deployment to Mars. Immediate authorization. Civilian evacuation protocol Omega. She turned back to Tak. How many ships? 7 attack cruisers, dozens of fighter escorts. They'll reach Mars in less than 20 Earth hours. That's enough time, Jiwoo said with unexpected confidence. Enough time for what? To evacuate. The colony has over 30,000 humans. No, Admiral. Enough time for our defensive fleet to get in position. Her eyes met his. You should prepare yourself. What you witnessed with the Pathfinder was a small demonstration of human capability. What comes next will change how the galaxy understands warfare. On her shuttle back to the Pathfinder, Jiwoo opened a secure channel to Earth Defense Command. General Daehyun's stern face appeared on screen. Captain, we've received your alert. The 3rd and 5th fleets are mobilizing. Sir, I recommend full deployment of dimensional shift technology. The Krell need to understand exactly what they're facing. The general nodded grimly. Agreed. The Mars defense will serve as a necessary demonstration. He paused. What about your Krell contact? Admiral Tak is different, Jiwoo replied. He sees the bigger picture. When this is over, he may be our only ally among Krell leadership. As the Pathfinder prepared for warp, Jiwoo gazed at the stars. Humanity had hoped to join the galactic community peacefully, sharing their unique approach to space travel gradually. Now they would need to reveal capabilities they had kept hidden for decades. The Krell attack force, believing they faced a technologically inferior enemy, raced toward Mars with overwhelming confidence. They had no way of knowing they were about to witness the full deployment of human dimensional shift technology, a revelation that would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Tak paced the length of his command center. Though officially ordered to stand down, he had convinced High Command to allow him observer status. His ship now held position at the edge of Mars's solar system, monitoring from a distance as the rogue Krell fleet approached the red planet. The main display showed Marshal Q's attack formation, 7 heavy cruisers in aero formation, 48 fighter escorts arranged in defensive clusters. The Marshal had assembled an overwhelming force capable of reducing the Mars colony to ash. Still no sign of human defensive response, reported First Officer Miju. Long-range scans show only civilian ships evacuating the colony. Tak's mandibles clicked nervously. They wouldn't abandon a colony of that size. Keep scanning. Sir, called Lieutenant Dury from the sensor station. There's unusual quantum fluctuation at the system's edge. It doesn't match any known warp signature. Tak moved quickly to Dury's station. Show me. The sensor display revealed a strange rippling distortion forming at the boundary of the solar system, like space itself was folding inward. What is that? Whispered Miju. Before Tak could respond, the distortion expanded rapidly. From what appeared to be a tear in the fabric of space, human vessels began to emerge, not one by one, but in perfect synchronized formation. 15 ships, then 30, then 50, materializing as if they'd been there all along, simply hidden behind a curtain of reality. Impossible, breathed Miju. No species can transport an entire fleet simultaneously. Yet the evidence filled their view screen. The human defensive force had arrived with impossible speed, bypassing conventional space entirely. Marshal Q's fleet, now detecting the human presence, began to alter course. But it was too late. The human vessels were already moving, not with conventional engines, but in a strange flickering pattern that defied tracking. Tak watched in stunned silence as the human ships seemed to dance through space, partially phasing in and out of normal reality. The Krell attackers fired volleys of destructive energy, only to have their targets shift partially into subspace, allowing the destructive beams to pass harmlessly through the spaces their hulls had occupied microseconds before. "Human ships can do that," Tak finally exclaimed, watching an Earth vessel transition 3 of its engines partially into subspace while maintaining perfect maneuvering control, something Krell scientists had declared theoretically impossible. On the tactical display, one human vessel performed a maneuver that made Tak's scientific mind reel. The ship appeared to split into 3 overlapping probability states, existing in multiple positions simultaneously before resolving back into a single form behind a Krell cruiser. "They're not just avoiding attacks," said Tactical Officer June. "They're using dimensional shifts for offensive positioning." Tak expected the human vessels to now unleash devastating weapons against the Krell aggressors. The rogue fleet was completely vulnerable, their targeting systems useless against enemies that wouldn't stay in a fixed position in space-time. Instead, something even more astonishing occurred. The human ships released not weapons, but expanding fields of shimmering energy that enveloped the Krell vessels one by one. Where these fields touched Krell ships, all systems simply stopped functioning. Engines died, weapons powered down. Even life support systems shifted to emergency backup power. "They're not destroying the ships," Tak realized aloud. "They're disabling them completely." Within 15 minutes, Marshal Q's entire fleet hung motionless in space, completely neutralized without a single hull breach or casualty. The efficiency was terrifying in its precision. Tak's communication officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's Captain Juu." "On screen," ordered Tak. Captain Juu appeared, now wearing a formal military uniform adorned with insignia that identified her as a fleet commander, far higher ranking than she had previously appeared. "Admiral Tak," she said calmly. "As you can see, we've neutralized the threat to our colony. All Krell personnel are unharmed." Tak struggled to find words. "Your ships, the dimensional shifting technology, it's beyond anything we thought possible." "We don't seek war, Admiral," Juu continued, "but we've studied history extensively, both yours and ours. We came prepared." "The fleet you disabled," Tak said carefully. "What do you intend to do with them?" "We'll keep their systems disabled while we evacuate our colonists, then release them to return to Krell space. I trust this demonstration makes our position clear. We wish for peaceful relations, but we will not be conquered or intimidated." After the transmission ended, Tak stood in silence for several minutes. The implications of what he had witnessed were profound. Humanity possessed technology that rendered conventional warfare obsolete. They could have destroyed the Krell fleet effortlessly, yet had chosen complete restraint. "Admiral," said Miju cautiously, "High Command is demanding a full report on what we've witnessed." Tak made his decision then, one that would alter his civilization's trajectory forever. "Prepare a complete data package. Every sensor reading, every visual record, every analysis." "Sir, some of this information is classified as highest security level," protested his intelligence officer. "I'm aware," Tak replied. "But what we've witnessed changes everything. The entire galaxy needs to understand what humanity truly is." Hours later, using access codes that only fleet admirals possessed, Tak transmitted the complete record of the human response to every major species in the unified galactic network. With it, he included a personal message. "What you are witnessing is not merely a new weapons technology or defense system. It is a fundamental shift in how war can be conducted. The humans could have destroyed us without effort. Instead, they chose complete restraint. They disabled an attack fleet without a single casualty. Remember this before you consider them prey. We face not merely a new species, but a civilization that has developed along a path we barely comprehended was possible. As he sent the transmission, Tak knew his career was over. He would likely face court-martial for sharing classified military information. But he also knew that without this warning, other species might make the same catastrophic mistake as Marshal Q. In his private quarters, Tak recorded one final log entry. Today I witnessed what may be the future of interstellar relations. The humans possess technology that makes our traditional concepts of warfare obsolete. Yet what impressed me most was not their power, but their restraint. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they disabled our ships while preserving every life aboard. If there is hope for peaceful coexistence in this galaxy, it lies in understanding that true advancement comes not from destructive capability, but from the wisdom to avoid using it. 3 hours later, as predicted, security officers arrived to place him under arrest for treason against the Krell Empire. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Concord gleamed with ceremonial lights. Delegates from 12 spacefaring civilizations gathered to witness a historic event, the formal admission of humanity as the 13th member species. The massive chamber, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and environmental needs, hummed with anticipation. Admiral Tak adjusted his formal regalia nervously. 6 months earlier, he had stood before a Krell military tribunal, charged with treason for his unauthorized transmission of classified information to other species. The evidence against him had been overwhelming. He had freely admitted his actions. Yet here he stood, not only free but honored, wearing the newly created insignia of Krell Ambassador to Earth. His rehabilitation had not come easily. For weeks after his arrest, he had been held in solitary confinement while chaos erupted throughout the galaxy. His transmission, showing human ships performing impossible dimensional shifts and neutralizing a Krell attack fleet without casualties, had transformed interstellar politics overnight. The Vrex Dominion had immediately halted their military expansion. The Molian hierarchy had withdrawn forces from disputed territories. Every major power suddenly faced the reality that conventional military superiority meant nothing against humanity's dimensional technology. "Nervous, Ambassador?" asked a familiar voice. Tak turned to find Admiral Ju approaching, her human form small beside his armored exoskeleton, yet somehow commanding greater presence. She wore a formal Earth uniform with the gold and blue insignia of their space fleet. "A reasonable response," Tak admitted, "considering I expected to spend my remaining years in a military prison." Ju smiled. "Your actions saved lives, Admiral. Even your own government eventually recognized that." The reality was more complex. After initial outrage, the Krell High Command had faced a difficult truth. Tak's warning had prevented other species from making potentially catastrophic mistakes in approaching humanity. His treason had, paradoxically, served the Empire's best interests. Once the Krell leadership accepted that humanity could not be challenged militarily, diplomatic relations became the only logical course. "The signing ceremony will begin shortly," Ju said. "The human delegation asked specifically for you to stand with them." As they moved toward the central platform, delegates from other species watched with undisguised curiosity. Many had reviewed the recordings from Mars countless times, still struggling to understand the technology that allowed human ships to partially exist outside normal space. The ceremony proceeded with formal speeches and the ritual signing of treaties. When Earth's Ambassador Minho pressed his palm to the ancient crystal that symbolized membership in the Concord, subtle lights pulsed through the structure, acknowledging humanity's addition to the galactic community. Later, at the diplomatic reception, Tak found himself in a quiet corner with Admiral Ju. Various dignitaries had approached them throughout the evening, many seeking hints about human technology or Krell military reorganization. Now, finally alone, Tak sought his opportunity. "There's a question that has haunted me since our first encounter," he said. Jiwoo nodded for him to continue. "Your ships, your capabilities. If you had these advantages, why not simply announce yourselves with a demonstration of power? Why risk being perceived as weak?" She considered his question carefully before answering. "Because any species advanced enough for interstellar travel should value peaceful contact above demonstrations of force. Those who don't," she paused, "well, they learn eventually. Like we did," Tak acknowledged. "Your species isn't the first to misunderstand our intentions," Jiwoo said. "Throughout human history, we've learned that true strength lies in restraint. Displaying power unnecessarily often creates enemies rather than allies. A philosophy my people are still struggling to accept," Tak admitted. 3 weeks later, Tak stood in the central hall of Earth's primary space academy. Around him, scientists from 12 species worked together in what had been dubbed the Convergence Initiative. Humans shared basic theories of dimensional manipulation while learning about Krell energy technology, Vrex biological computing, and Molian gravitational engineering. Professor Jiho, Earth's leading dimensional physicist, guided a small group through holographic models, showing how human ships created localized subspace fields. "The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to make our ships withstand attacks," she explained to the fascinated alien scientists. "Instead, we developed ways to ensure attacks never fully connected with our vessels in the first place." Nearby, Krell engineers demonstrated advanced power distribution systems to human technicians. The exchange flowed both ways, each species contributing technologies without revealing their most guarded secrets. That evening, in his quarters at the embassy, Tak reviewed the latest report from the Krell homeworld. The incident with the human fleet had become required study at the Krell Military Academy. Senior officers now taught cadets a revolutionary concept: that true power wasn't measured by destruction capacity, but by the wisdom to apply restraint. The report quoted Grand Strategist Nari: "The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who threatens loudly, but the one who quietly hopes for peace while being thoroughly prepared for war." 1 year after the Mars incident, Tak stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital diplomatic station, watching the arrival of the first joint species patrol vessel. The ship, named Convergence, incorporated technologies from 4 different civilizations, including limited dimensional shifting capabilities shared by humans. Admiral Jiwoo, now Earth's representative to the Galactic Defense Council, joined him at the window. "Sometimes I wonder," Tak said quietly, "what would have happened if Vice Commander Suk hadn't fired upon your diplomatic vessel that first day." "History often turns on small moments," Jiwoo replied. "Perhaps we would have established relations more gradually, or perhaps another incident would have revealed our capabilities. Either way, the galaxy has changed forever," Tak observed. "The old paradigms of military superiority through firepower have become obsolete." Below them, Earth rotated slowly, its blue-white surface partially visible as the station orbited. Humanity's homeworld looked deceptively peaceful, giving no hint that it had produced a civilization capable of revolutionizing interstellar travel and warfare. "The Vrex ambassador asked me yesterday if humans have shared all their capabilities," Tak mentioned casually. Jiwoo smiled but didn't answer directly. "Trust builds slowly, Admiral. Just as we've learned from other species, we continue to explore new possibilities in dimensional physics." Tak understood the diplomatic non-answer. Humanity had revealed enough to establish their position in the galactic community, while undoubtedly keeping more advanced technologies in reserve, just as every species did. As the Convergence ship docked, its unique hybrid design representing the new era of cooperation, Tak reflected on how completely his understanding of power had transformed. His people had dominated through superior weaponry for millennia, yet had been rendered helpless by human ships that simply stepped sideways through reality. And it had all begun with his shocked exclamation on the Krell command deck: "Human ships can do that." The phrase had since entered common usage throughout the galaxy, a shorthand reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that true advancement might follow entirely unexpected paths. As delegates from 12 species gathered to welcome the Convergence crew, Tak watched with satisfaction. The galaxy had entered a new age of stability and cooperation, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the careful restraint shown by a species that could have easily dominated but chose instead to collaborate. The end.